I was 65 years old. I had raised my son, paid off my house, survived 31 years in corporate America, and somehow I ended up right back where I started, waking up at 6 in the morning, packing lunches, wiping faces, answering to someone else's schedule. Except this time, nobody was paying me. My name is Karen Terry, and for 2 years, I was my grandchildren's full-time babysitter. Not because I volunteered, not because I wanted to, because my son Leon asked, and I loved him. So I said yes. That yes almost cost me everything. Stay with me, because this story does not end where you think it does. Let me take you back to the spring of 2023. I had just retired from my job as a project manager at a logistics company in Columbus, Ohio. 31 years. Same company. I knew that building like the back of my hand. When I walked out on my last day, I had 2 things on my mind. My garden and sleep. That was it. Simple. Quiet. Mine. I had a plan. Take 3 months to rest. Then figure out what I actually wanted to do with my time. Maybe volunteer. Maybe travel to see my sister in Tucson. Maybe just sit on my back porch and drink my coffee while it was still hot. For 6 weeks, that's exactly what I did. It was the most peace I had felt in decades. Then Leon called. Leon is my son. He's 38. He lives about 20 minutes away from me, here in Columbus. He works in sales, long hours, a lot of travel. His wife, Betty, works as a dental hygienist. They have 2 kids, Mia, who was 4 at the time, and Tyler, who was 18 months. Their daycare had just shut down. Permanently. No warning. Just a letter in the mail one Friday. Leon called me that same evening. He said,
"Mom, I don't know what we're going to do. We can't afford another daycare right now. The wait lists are months long. You're retired, you're right here. Could you just help us out for a few weeks while we figure something out?"
A few weeks. I want you to hold on to those 2 words. A few weeks. I said yes. Of course I did. He's my son. Those are my grandchildren. The next Monday morning, I drove to their house at 6:45 a.m. Betty handed me Tyler, still in his pajamas, and walked out the door. No real instructions. No written schedule. Just,
Mia knows her routine. Snacks are in the pantry. I'll be back by 5:30. Thanks, Karen.
not Mom. Karen. I noticed that. I filed it away, and I got to work. For the first 2 weeks, it was fine. The kids were sweet. I loved being around them. I made breakfast, took Mia to the park, kept Tyler on a nap schedule. By week 3, Leon and Betty had found a new daycare, but the wait list was 3 months out. So I stayed. By month 2, their situation had changed. Betty had picked up extra hours. Leon had a new regional territory. More travel. They needed me earlier in the mornings and later in the evenings, 6:30 a.m. to 6 p.m., 5 days a week. I want to be honest with you. I did not fully realize what was happening at first because it happened slowly, a little earlier here, a little later there. One more task, one more request. That is how it works. It rarely happens all at once. By month 3, I was not just watching the kids. I was doing the laundry, grocery shopping on my way over, prepping dinner before Betty got home, cleaning up after everyone. I was running their household, and nobody had asked me. It had just happened, one small thing at a time. I remember one Tuesday in October. I had been there since 6:30. Tyler had been fussy all day, a tooth coming in. Mia had spilled juice on the couch and cried about it for 40 minutes. I had done 2 loads of laundry, swept the kitchen, made a pot of chicken soup from scratch because Leon had texted me that he wasn't feeling well. Betty came home at 6:15. She walked in, looked at the pot on the stove, and said,
"Oh, you made the soup with the wrong noodles. Leon likes egg noodles, not wide ones.
That was it. No hello. No thank you. Just wrong noodles. I stood in that kitchen, and I smiled, and I said nothing. But something shifted in me that day. I drove home that evening, and I sat in my car in my own driveway for 10 minutes, just sitting. I asked myself a question I hadn't asked in months. When did this become my life? I had retired. I had paid my dues. I had raised my son. I had earned my peace. And here I was, exhausted, unpaid, and being corrected about noodles. That was the moment the question planted itself in me. Not an explosion, just a seed. A quiet, firm question. How long are you going to keep doing this? I want to be fair to my son. Leon is not a bad man. He works hard. He loves his kids. He loves me. But somewhere between month 1 and month 6, Leon stopped seeing what I was doing as a favor. He started seeing it as a given. And Betty had never really seen it as a favor at all. I want to give you a specific example. In December, I told Leon I was going to take 3 days off over Christmas week. My sister Ruth was flying in from Tucson. I hadn't seen her in almost 2 years. I had already told them a month in advance. Leon said, "Sure, Mom, no problem." 2 days before Christmas Eve, Betty called me.
Karen, we looked at the calendar and it doesn't really work for us to take those days. Leon has a client dinner on the 23rd and I have a morning shift. Can you come in just for the morning on the 23rd? Just until noon.
I said no, politely. I reminded her that Ruth was visiting. I reminded her I had told them a month ago. There was a long pause on the phone. Then Betty said,
I just figured you'd want to spend time with the grandkids over the holidays.
"You see how that works?" She turned my boundary into a character question, as if saying, no meant I didn't love my grandchildren. That is a tactic, whether Betty knew it or not. That is a tactic. I held my ground. Ruth came. We had 3 wonderful days together. But after that phone call, things between Betty and me were different. Cool, polite, but different. And I started paying closer attention. What I noticed was this. Betty never said thank you. Not once. In 6 months. Now, I am not someone who needs constant praise. I am 65 years old. I am past that. But not once. I also noticed that Betty had started leaving tasks for me without asking. A note on the counter saying, "Please pick up milk and bread." A load of laundry left sitting in the washer. A sticky note on the fridge. "Mia has a dentist appointment Thursday. Can you take her?" No question mark. No, please. Just, can you take her? I want to stop here and say something important. This is not just a story about Betty or Leon. This is a story about what happens when we say yes for too long. When we keep saying yes because we love someone, or because we feel guilty saying no, or because we think that's just what grandmothers do. We teach people that our time has no value. That is a hard thing to admit, but it is true. By January of 2024, I was showing up 6 days a week. 6, because one Saturday Betty had an event, and I came. And then the next Saturday, there was another reason. And then Saturday just became part of the schedule, without a conversation, without anyone asking. It just became expected. I was also noticing things happening to my body. My knees hurt every morning. I was tired in a way that sleep did not fix. I had stopped gardening entirely. I had not called my friend Diane in 2 months. I had disappeared from my own life. And the worst part, I had let it happen. That is the part that is hardest to say out loud. I had let it happen, but I was done letting it happen. In February of 2024, I made a decision. I was going to have the conversation. I am not a dramatic person. I do not like conflict. I spent 31 years in corporate America managing people, and I learned this. Hard conversations do not get easier when you wait. They get harder. So I called Leon on a Sunday evening when the kids were already in bed. I asked him to come over to my house. Just him. Not Betty. He came over on a Tuesday. I made coffee. We sat at my kitchen table, and I told him the truth. I said, Leon, I love you and I love those babies, but I need to be honest with you. What started as a few weeks has turned into a full-time job, and I cannot keep doing it. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Mom, I thought you liked being with them. I said, I do like being with them, but liking them and having my entire life consumed are two different things. I come home exhausted every single day. My knees are bothering me. I have not had time to do the things I planned for this phase of my life. That is not sustainable. He looked at the table. What are you saying exactly? I told him clearly I would help, but on defined terms. 2 days a week, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. No weekends. No grocery shopping. No laundry. Just the kids. And I needed 3 weeks to make the transition. That would give them time to find backup coverage. He nodded slowly. Betty is not going to be happy. I said, I understand that, but this is not Betty's decision. And it's not yours, Leon. This is my life. And I am reclaiming it. I want to talk about the guilt, because after Leon left that night, I sat in my kitchen alone, and the guilt came. A voice that said, You're abandoning your grandchildren. You're being selfish. What kind of grandmother does this? And I want to tell you, because some of you are feeling that guilt right now, just listening, I want to tell you what I told that voice. I said, loving someone does not mean destroying yourself for them. That is not love. That is sacrifice without consent. And it builds resentment. A grandmother who is rested, healthy, and has her own life is a better grandmother, not worse. The kids were not losing me. They were getting a version of me that still had something left to give. I held on to that through all of what came next. The transition did not go smoothly. I had expected pushback from Betty. I had not expected what came from Leon. The week after our conversation, Leon called me 3 times. Each call was a version of the same thing. Could I reconsider? Did I understand how hard this made things for them? Was I sure? I said yes each time, gently, but clearly. Yes, I was sure. Then the text started, not from Leon, from Betty. I'm not going to read them all, but I'll give you the general theme. I can't believe you're doing this. You know what this does to our family. I thought family meant something to you. I did not respond to the texts. I had already said what I needed to say. Responding to that kind of message only keeps the fire going. But then came the moment that I consider the cruelty. It was a Saturday, about 10 days after my conversation with Leon. I had gone to their house to say goodbye to the kids for the week, just a regular visit. Mia ran to me at the door. Tyler reached up for me, and Leon walked into the hallway and said, in front of Mia, Mom, I just want you to know, when Grandma decides she's too busy for you guys, you'll understand why someday. Mia looked at me, confused, her little face trying to make sense of what her daddy had just said. I felt something go very cold and very still inside me. Not anger, something colder than anger. He had used my granddaughter, a 4-year-old child, to punish me. I picked Mia up. I hugged her. I told her I loved her and that I would see her soon. I put her down. I picked up Tyler and held him for a minute, and then I looked at Leon. I said, that was not okay. We'll talk when you're ready to do that like adults. I walked to my car. I drove home, and I cried for about 15 minutes, not because I doubted my decision, because I was grieving the version of my son I thought I knew, the one who would not do something like that. But I also knew something else. I knew that if I had given in to avoid that moment, if I had walked back into that house and said, okay, fine, I'll stay, I would have taught everyone in that family, including those children, that cruelty works. And I was not going to do that. So I didn't. I want to tell you about a Tuesday afternoon in March of 2024. I was at home. It was 11 o'clock in the morning. I was sitting at my kitchen table, coffee in hand, looking out at my backyard. The garden had been neglected for almost a year, but the early spring bulbs had come up anyway. Yellow and purple tulips, right along the back fence. And I remember thinking, they came back without me doing anything. I had planted those bulbs 8 years ago, and every spring they just came back. I know that sounds small, but something about it made me feel like I could come back too. I had spent 31 years in logistics project management. I had managed teams of up to 40 people. I had overseen multi-million-dollar supply chain projects. I had trained dozens of younger employees over the years. I still had all of that. It had not gone anywhere. I opened my laptop for the first time in months. Not to scroll, to think. I typed a question into the search bar. Can you start a consulting business at 65? What came back surprised me. There were thousands of results, articles, success stories, guides. One article talked about how experienced professionals in their 60s were among the fastest growing segment of independent consultants in the country. Companies, especially small and mid-sized businesses, were specifically looking for people with real-world experience, not theory, experience, the kind that takes 30 years to build. I kept reading. I read for 3 hours that morning. I forgot to eat lunch. By that afternoon, I had filled half a legal pad with notes. A niche. That was the first thing every article said. Pick a niche. Don't try to help everyone. Help one type of client really well. For me, the niche was obvious. Small businesses struggling with operations. Specifically, companies with between 5 and 50 employees who had grown fast and were now in chaos. They had more work than their systems could handle. They needed someone to come in, look at the mess, and help them build structure. That was exactly what I had done for 3 decades. I knew how to do that. I had done it for other people's companies for 31 years. It was time to do it for my own. I want to be straight with you. I had never run a business before. I had been an employee my entire career. So I had a lot to learn, and I am going to share what I actually did, step by step, because if you are thinking about doing something like this, I want you to have the real information, not the glamorized version, the real one. Step 1. I decided on a business structure. I spoke to a small business attorney in Columbus. One appointment, $200. Best $200 I ever spent. She walked me through my options. For a solo consulting practice, she recommended an LLC, a limited liability company. It protects your personal assets if anything goes wrong. It also looks more professional to clients than operating as a sole proprietor. Filing the LLC in Ohio cost me $99. I did it online in about 45 minutes. Step 2. I set up the basics. A separate business bank account, a simple accounting spreadsheet to track income and expenses, a business email address. None of that cost more than $20 a month. Step 3. I built a simple online presence. I am going to be honest, this part intimidated me. I am not a technology person. I know how to use a computer, but building a website sounded overwhelming. My neighbor's daughter is 26. She works in marketing. I asked her to teach me. She showed me a website builder called Squarespace. Within a weekend, I had a simple, clean, professional website, a home page, an about page, a services page, a contact form. That was all I needed. Step 4. I used AI tools to save time. I had heard about AI writing tools, specifically one called ChatGPT. I had been skeptical, but I tried it. I used it to help me write my website copy. I told it what I did and who I helped. It gave me a draft. I edited it until it sounded like me. I also used it to help me write my first proposal for a client. I had the knowledge. The AI helped me organize and present it clearly. It was like having a very patient assistant who never judged you for asking a basic question. Step 5. I told people this was the hardest step because it required me to say out loud, I am a consultant. I help small businesses fix their operations. Here is what I charge. I sent emails to former colleagues. I posted on LinkedIn for the first time in years. I had coffee with 2 old coworkers and told them what I was building. Within 3 weeks, one of those coworkers referred me to a small manufacturing company in Westerville. They had grown from 8 employees to 22 in 2 years. They were drowning. Their owner was sleeping 4 hours a night trying to manage everything. I met with him. I listened for an hour. Then I told him exactly what I saw and what I would do about it. He hired me on the spot. My first client. My rate was $95 an hour. I drove home that day, and I sat in my car in my own driveway again. But this time, I was not crying. I was smiling. I am not going to pretend it was all easy. There were frustrating days. Days where a client didn't follow through on what we agreed. Days where I doubted myself. Days where I missed my grandchildren and felt that old guilt creeping back. But I want to tell you about the differences I felt because they were real and they were significant. The first difference was physical. 3 months into running my own business, my knees had stopped hurting. I know that sounds odd, but hear me out. When I was doing childcare full-time, I was on the floor constantly, getting up and down with Tyler, bending, lifting, and I was exhausted, so I was not sleeping well. Bad sleep makes everything hurt worse. Once I reclaimed my schedule, I started sleeping 7 to 8 hours a night. I started walking 2 miles every morning again, something I had done for years before babysitting took over. Within a month, I felt physically better than I had in over a year. The second difference was mental. I felt sharp again. I had always been a problem solver. That part of my brain had been sitting idle. Now, it had work to do. I was reading industry articles. I was studying my client's business. I was writing recommendations and presenting them. My mind felt engaged in a way it hadn't since I retired. The third difference was financial. This matters. I am going to talk about money plainly because I think we do seniors a disservice when we dance around it. My Social Security covers my basic expenses. My retirement savings are intact. I am not desperate for money, but having my own income again, money I earn myself, doing work I chose, that changed something in me. I took Ruth to Tucson for a week in August. I paid because I could. I bought myself a good winter coat, not because I needed to, because I wanted to. Those are small things. But financial independence, even partial independence, changes how you feel about yourself. It changes your posture in a room. The fourth difference was about my relationship with Leon and Betty, and this is the one that surprised me most. Things were strained for several months. I am not going to gloss over that. Leon and I barely spoke for 6 weeks. It hurt. But in June, Leon called me. He asked if he could come over. He sat at my kitchen table, same spot as before, and he said,
Mom, I owe you an apology. What I said in front of Mia was wrong, and I have been thinking about it for a long time. I was scared and I took it out on you in the worst possible way. I'm sorry.
I looked at my son, the same boy I had stayed up with when he had fevers, the same boy I had driven to baseball practice for 6 years, The same boy I had taught how to change a tire and how to write a thank you note. And I said, I accept your apology. And I love you. We sat there for another hour, just talking, like we used to. Betty and I are not close. We are cordial. We treat each other respectfully. I do not expect more than that, and I have made peace with it. I still see my grandchildren. Every other Saturday, I take them for the day. My choice. My terms. And I am genuinely happy to do it. Because now when I walk in their door, I am not depleted. I am not resentful. I am glad to be there. And they can feel the difference. Children always can. I want to step back from my story for a moment, because I know many of you listening are not just watching this for entertainment. You are watching because something in this story sounds familiar. Maybe it is not childcare. Maybe it is something else. A parent you are caring for. A household you are managing for a grown child. Time being taken from you in small pieces over and over. I want to share what I have learned, not as an expert, as a woman who went through it and came out the other side. First, know what you are actually agreeing to. When someone asks for your help, ask them one question. Can you tell me exactly what this looks like? The hours, the days, and how long? Get specifics. A few weeks is not a specific answer. 3 weeks, Monday through Friday, 8 to 4. That is a specific answer. If they cannot give you specifics, that is information. It means they do not plan to stop. Second, your guilt is not a compass. Guilt tells you something feels uncomfortable. It does not tell you that you are doing something wrong. Setting boundaries on your own time, your own health, your own life, that is not wrong. No matter how much guilt shows up when you do it. Third, your experience has market value. I want to say this directly to the women who spent decades in the workforce and think those years are behind them. They are not behind you. They are with you. The things, how to manage people, how to solve problems, how to communicate under pressure, how to get things done. Those things are worth money. There are small businesses right now in your city who need exactly what you know. They cannot afford to hire a full-time executive, but they can afford to bring in someone like you for 10 to 15 hours a month. Think about what you did for 30 years. What specific problems did you solve? What did your company rely on you for? That is your niche. Fourth, you do not need to go back to a traditional job. Consulting is not the only option. Some women start tutoring. Some do bookkeeping. Some do virtual assistant work for small businesses. Some teach skills they have spent a lifetime developing. The key is this. You set the hours. You set the terms. You choose the clients. That is the part no traditional job ever gave you. And at 65, you have earned the right to have it. Fifth, starting is harder than continuing. The first step is the hardest, not because it is technically difficult, because it requires you to believe that you are worth the investment. That is the real obstacle for most of us, not the LLC paperwork, not the website, not the technology, the belief. I am here to tell you, you are worth it. You have been worth it this whole time. At the moment, I have been running my consulting practice for just over a year. I have 5 regular clients. I work about 25 hours a week. I earn more per hour than I did in most of my corporate career. My knees are fine. My garden is back. Ruth and I have already planned a trip to Charleston in the fall. I talk to Leon every week. It is not perfect, but it is real. And I will take real over perfect any day. I see Mia and Tyler every other Saturday. Mia turned 6 last month. She knows I have my own business. She calls it my work. She asked me once, "Grandma, what do you do at work?" I told her I help people fix problems. She nodded very seriously and said, "That's a good job." Yes, baby, it is. I want to say something about legacy, because that word gets used a lot. And usually it means things you leave behind after you are gone. But I think legacy is also what you show people while you are here. What did I show my grandchildren when I was running myself into the ground? I showed them that adults, especially women, erase themselves for other people. That your time is not your own. That saying no is abandonment. What am I showing them now? That a woman in her mid-60s can build something new. That it is never too late to decide what your life looks like. That love does not require you to disappear. That is the legacy I want to leave. Not a woman who gave until she had nothing left. A woman who chose herself and had more to give because of it. If any part of this story sounded like your life, I want you to know something. You are not stuck. You are not too old. You are not selfish for wanting more. You are a woman who has spent decades taking care of other people. It is time to take care of you. My name is Karen Terry, and I am 66 years old, and I am just getting started. If this story spoke to you, share it with a woman who needs to hear it. Leave a comment and tell me, what is one thing you have been putting off for yourself? Subscribe so you never miss a story, because on this channel, we believe it is never too late, and we are proving it every single week.